There have been two 16 seeds to defeat a 1 seed in the entire history of March Madness, but which one of these upsets was the biggest upset in the tournament? The answer might not be what you think it is. In 2018, the University of Maryland Baltimore County, or UNBC for short, entered the NCAA tournament after winning their conference tournament off a buzzer beater from their star player Jairus Lyles. Though their run of making it here was magical, they were ultimately planned to be fodder for the country's #1 overall team, Virginia. Even though Virginia was without one of their premier players in DeAndre Hunter, nobody thought that UNBC was capable of pulling off any funny business this time around. But as soon as the game started, it became very clear that something was off. Virginia's offense was sluggish, and they were leaving UNBC's top players wide open for easy three-pointers. The game was tied at 21 at the half, the lowest halftime score in the tournament that year. But in the second half, UNBC would crack the code and play the best half of basketball in the history of their program. With a 53-point second half led by Jairus Lyles, Joe Shawburn, and KJ Mora, UNBC caught fire after the break and never cooled down one bit. In the end, Virginia had been embarrassed on national television, as many tuned in to watch this historic moment unfold. There wasn't exactly a protocol on how to handle such a situation, since remember, no 1 seed had ever lost to a 16 seed in the tournament's history. Not only was Virginia a #1 seed, they were the #1 overall team in the entire tournament. Not exactly the best look for the program. But perhaps our next team got an even worse look after their humiliation, as in 2023, we get the second and most recent 16 seed to defeat a 1 seed, Farleigh Dickinson. Now, FDU's story on how they got here is insane. First and foremost, they didn't even win their conference tournament, which is how any team in a non-Power 6 conference makes the tournament in this day and age. Their coach, Tobin Anderson, had been wandering around different divisions of basketball for some time, but finally landed a Division I coaching job with a squad that was one of the shortest in the entire country. And listen to this, just a year prior in 2022, the team went 4-22, making this either the luckiest season in FDU basketball history or the quickest rebuild in FDU basketball history. And to even make it to the first round, they had to play into the tournament, scoring off against Texas Southern in the first 4. But they took care of business, maybe even a bit too well. More on that soon. But before we continue about that, if you're enjoying the video so far, be sure to hit that subscribe button and comment below your favorite March Madness moment. So, with FDU being one of the shortest and smallest teams in the country, what better test for such a team than with one of the tallest teams in the country? Featuring a 7'4" monster in Zach Edey, Purdue was shaping up to be a contender for the national championship after winning the Big Ten and finishing their season at 29-6. Though the last few years for Purdue had been pretty rough. Purdue had established themselves as a perennial choker in the Big Dance up to this point. In the last 2 years, they'd been knocked out by a 13 seed, and then the following year by a 15 seed, though that 15 seed was something special, and could be a video in of itself. So it came as no surprise at all that Purdue was looking to make a statement this time around, with everything to prove, but also everything to lose in the event of a disaster. Remember when I said that FDU took care of business a bit too well? Here's what I mean by that. After knocking off a 14-20 Texas Southern team in the first 4, our good friend Tobin Anderson made this statement in the locker room.
The more I watch Purdue, the more I think we can beat them. Yes, sir. Let's go shock the world. Let's go do this. Yes, sir.
At the time, making this kind of statement was absolutely insane. I mean, they're the last ranked team in the entire tournament going against a generational talent. Was he saying this to hype up his team, or was he that delusionally confident in his squad? Though all would be settled in 2 days, and it became time for FDU and Tobin Anderson to stick to their word. Unlike the previous game we discussed, this one was close all the way through, with the scoring margin never becoming greater than 10 points either way. At the half, it looked like there was a glimmer of hope, as FDU was leading Purdue by a score of 32-31. It was only the 12th time in history that a 16 seed led at the break. Everyone took note of the score, but didn't think too much of it. Many thought that Purdue, like many other 1 seeds, would put their foot down in the second half and run away with this one, much like a similar team in the situation. Virginia, the year after losing to a 16 seed, had reclaimed a 1 seed in 2019, meaning it was time for redemption against another 16 seed in Gardner-Webb. But at the half, it looked like lightning was going to strike twice. After trailing by as many as 14 in the first half, Virginia was losing to Gardner-Webb 36-30. But in the second half, a DeAndre Hunter jam signaled the end of Gardner-Webb's pipe dream, as Virginia would cruise into the next round, and after miraculous finish, ironically beating Purdue along the way, Virginia found themselves as national champions. But one thing separated this 2019 Virginia team from this Purdue team that we're talking about right now. Virginia had been in this exact situation before and overcame their mistakes against UNBC to finish off their opponent. Purdue had waltzed into a situation that they were far from ready to take on, and we all know how it turned out in the end. Tobin Anderson's declaration had become true. FDU had stunned the entire basketball world, taking down #1 seed Purdue by a score of 63-58. For the third year in a row, Purdue would be sent home by a bottom 4 seed in the tournament. Today, these are the only two 16 seeds to win in the first round, but neither of them would make it to the Sweet 16, leaving the door open for an even greater run by another team in the near future. So, with all of that out of the way, which upset was more surprising? UNBC had completely dismantled the #1 overall team in the country by 20 points. But at the same time, some people thought that UNBC was slightly underseeded and could have been around the 14 seed line. FDU, on the other hand, didn't even win their conference and limped into the tournament, and against all odds, upset one of the most dominant teams in the country featuring a 7'4" center. So with everything in mind, while UNBC's blowout was certainly a big shock to many, I'm giving this one to FDU. From their story to making it here to their massive size disadvantage and Purdue playing without any major injuries, FDU's upset was definitely more shocking and less likely. But hey, with how Virginia bounced back in 2019, maybe finally, all the Ducks will line up for Purdue this year. But that's just my take. Do you think UNBC had the more surprising upset, or is FDU the king of the 16 seeds? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you all in the next one.